Good evening, everybody. It's great to see so many people from the district coming out for this program. We're going to have a couple of these, so we're really excited about it. We want to just thank you for coming tonight, and we're excited to partner with our district guidance and counseling with Angie Williams. Where did Angie go? Right over there from our district counseling group. And we're going to be bringing you a two-part series, so tonight, and then we're going to have another one in January, I think the 15th of January. Yes, that the lead counselors will be leading from the schools, I believe. For those of you who are not familiar with PTA Council, we are the district PTA, and we are a resource to all of the local PTAs on your respective campuses. My name is Laura Rose, and I am the Arts and Education Chair for PTA Council. If you have not, we want to encourage all of you to join your PTAs. If you have not, please do so and get with your respective PTAs at your schools. If you are not joining the PTA, your kids are not able to take advantage of some of the great things that are going on, including scholarships. I think that's probably a key thing. So you are not able to participate in those if you have not joined the PTA. All right, so both locally here and through Texas PTA. So we're happy to introduce Lauren Newsom. Lauren is right over here. She has a bachelor's and master's degrees from TCU and has worked for the Princeton Review for over 17 years. She's currently the general manager overseeing North Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, and is certified to teach and train teachers for ACT and SAT courses, in addition to graduate level exams. She frequently speaks on topics ranging from standardized testing to the college admissions process. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Lauren and let her get going.
All right. Hi, thank you. Like she said, my name's Lauren, and I'm with the Princeton Review. So for those of you who don't know, Princeton Review, we are primarily a test preparation and college admissions company. So what we do is help students get into college or graduate school. We help students get ready for the SAT, the ACT, as well as all of those graduate tests that you have to take later to become a doctor or a lawyer, any of those kinds of things. We help with all that too. So tonight, though, I'm here really to talk to you guys about the SAT, about the ACT, how they work, what the deal is with all of these, how to prepare for them, some basic strategies and tips for handling each of these tests. We're going to talk about timelines and when you should be thinking about doing all of these things. And hopefully I can answer some questions for you, because I know that this college admissions process is kind of stressful sometimes. Is anybody finding that they are a little bit stressed out about this whole process? Yeah. So we do a big survey at Princeton Review every year. We call it our College Hopes and Worries survey. We survey hundreds of thousands of parents and students in high school and college. And one of the big questions that we always ask is, like, how stressed are you about this? And over 95% say highly stressed about this entire process. So hopefully today we can relieve a little bit of that stress for you guys. So I will take some questions as we go. We'll also have a little bit of time for questions at the end, but hopefully we will be able to address pretty much everything that you need to know about these tests and sort of how they work when thinking about your admissions process. So that's kind of where we're headed for today. So first of all, what are the SAT and ACT? Well, they're tests that you have to take. They're admissions, which basically just mean they're a way for colleges to compare students from various schools. Because a B in chemistry at your high school may not be the same as a B in chemistry at a school in Iowa, or a school in Plano, or a school, even on the other side of town, right? So they need some sort of standardized measure to try to compare students from various schools. And the best that we've come up with so far is the SAT and the ACT. So that's what we're kind of here to talk about. So let's think about then, what do these tests actually tell a college about you? So do these tests, kind of pop quiz here, do these admissions tests measure your intelligence? Do they tell them how smart and intelligent you are? Yeah, no, false. There's actually no correlation between success on like intelligence tests and that sort of thing and success on the SAT. Can they be used to award financial aid? Yes, absolutely. Do they reflect your GPA in high school? Nope, yeah, no correlation there. Do they predict your college GPA? Yeah, nope, no correlation there either. Can they be prepared? Should they be prepared for? Absolutely. Do they test what you've learned in high school? Kinda, right? So, yeah, we'll put some question marks in there. They test a lot of the content, right? Like algebra. There's algebra on the SAT. There's algebra on the ACT. You learned that in high school or junior high, right? Depending on when you took it. But yeah, so they test you on that stuff. But it's a little weird because they don't necessarily test it in the same way that you would see it in your actual algebra class, right? So the way that they format the questions is a little bit different, and so the way that you have to approach them is therefore then a little bit different. So when we're talking about these tests, if they don't test your intelligence, they don't tell you how good you're going to do in college, right? So what do they actually tell a school about you? These tests measure how well you take the SAT and how well you take the ACT. Okay, so one of the first things that we always tell students to do is take a practice test, see how you do. But if you don't do that well on this test, on that first time through the door, don't stress. Because it doesn't mean that you're not an amazing, wonderful person with an amazing, wonderful future. All it means is you haven't learned how to take this test yet, okay? So don't take your scores personally. It is not about how you're going to be able to do in life. They're not a measure of your intelligence, and anybody with proper coaching and practice can see their scores improve on the SAT and the ACT. So that's what we're here to kind of focus on. So, oops, there we go. All right. So let's talk about kind of how they're set up, how they're scored, because that's always the big thing. It's all about the numbers, right? What was the score? What did I get? So let's start with ACT. ACT is made up of 4 scored sections: English, math, reading, and science. Each of those 4 scored sections is scored on a scale of 1 to 36. And then those scores are averaged to give you a total composite score, okay? The SAT is a little bit different. SAT has 2 big sections, the math section and what they call evidence-based reading and writing. Rolls right off the tongue, right? We refer to it as verbal. It's reading, it's grammar, that kind of stuff. And each of those 2 sections are scored on a 200 to 800 scale. Add them up to give you that 1600 perfect SAT score that we all want, right? But they don't stop there. So the SAT, in 2016, they revamped the test. They revamped the test about every 8 to 10 years, typically. And the last time they did that was in 2016. And they went to this scoring scale and they set it up. And one of the big things that they decided they wanted to do at the time was give you subscores. They got super excited about this idea of subscores, a little too excited. So now when you take your test, you actually get all of these scores. It's a little ridiculous, okay? So you get your total score at the top, which is that 400 to 1600 total scale. You get your 2 area scores, which we already talked about on the 200 to 800 scale for the evidence-based reading and writing, and then the math. Then you start getting into our sub-score sections here. The first of those are what they call cross-test scores. So cross-test scores, you scores in analysis in science and analysis in history and social studies. Okay, so when we just talked about the test, did anyone see science section on the SAT? No, it was on the ACT, right? But not on the SAT. So how are they giving us a science score? Basically, the reason they call it a cross-test score, the SAT still tests all the same science stuff that the ACT does. It just sprinkles it in among all the other stuff. So you have reading passages in the reading section. that are about science topics. You have math questions in the math section that are charts and graphs and data analysis that are just the same kind of charts and graphs and data analysis types of questions that you would see on the ACT separated off into their science section. Okay? The good thing to know about the science part of both of these tests is that there's no actual knowledge of science required. I mean, like really basic science. We breathe air, the bright thing in the sky is the sun, we live on Earth, right? That level of science, yes. But you don't need to know biology or chemistry or physics for the SAT or the ACT. Everything that they call science on these tests is, think of it like technical reading. It's reading and understanding charts and graphs and reading passages about scientific topics. So it's science adjacent, right? It's understanding and being able to work with scientific stuff more than it is actually coming in with a background knowledge in science, okay? So we get those cross-test scores, which are on 10 to 40 scale each. We also get separate what they call test scores in reading, writing and language, and math, also on a 10 to 40 scale. And then they give you a whole bunch of little sub-scores, 7 sub-scores on a 1 to 15 scale. We've got words in context and command of evidence, expression of ideas, standard English conventions, the math ones I love the names for, heart of algebra. Oh, right? Passport to advanced mathematics. Yay. And then, yeah, the problem solving and data analysis isn't quite as fun. So they give you all these sub-scores. Here's the thing with the sub-scores. Colleges don't care about the sub-scores. Okay, so you're going to get all these scores. When you get your score report, there are just numbers everywhere. The only ones that colleges are actually looking at for admissions or scholarship purposes at this point are the total score at the top and sometimes those 200 to 800 area scores for math and for evidence-based reading and writing, math and verbal. Other than that, everything else is really just for your reference. Okay? It's to help you figure out, like, wow, I did really great at the algebra stuff, but I really need to work on the standard English conventions. My grammar stuff isn't as good. So it's to help you sort of figure out what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are some areas of opportunity for improvement. Okay? So that's SAT. ACT is a little bit simpler. They also give you some sub-scores, but not nearly as crazy as SAT does. Like we said, ACT gives you separate scores in each of those areas, 1 to 36. Average them together for that composite score out of 36. Now, they average those together to get the composite, which means that each of the 4 sections is equally weighted, right? Going up to that total score. ACT recently announced something really super fun. Starting in September of 2020, so September of next year, students will be able to retake single sections of the test. Okay? So, you still have to the first time sit for the whole thing. But let's say that you went and took the whole thing, and then you came back and you're like, my science score wasn't that great. I don't want to go take the whole thing again. I just want to retake the science section. Starting in September of 2020, you will be able to do that on the ACT. Both tests, colleges for a long time have been doing what we call super scoring. Anyone know what super scoring is? Getting some nods. So super scoring basically is let's say you take the SAT a couple of times. And your math score in March was higher, but your verbal score in May was higher. What the colleges do is they take the highest in each section, put those together to give you a super score, like a Frankenstein score that you never actually got in one day, right? And that's the score that they use for you. They've done this for a really long time. Most schools super score with the SAT. A lot of schools didn't bother to super score with the ACT, but now, starting in September of 2020, ACT is going to super score for them. So what they will report is your highest of each section. And you'll be able to retake each section individually. So that's pretty cool. They just announced this a few weeks ago. We do anticipate that College Board with the SAT will not be far behind. And because they never want to be outdone, because ACT makes an announcement like this, now which test does everyone want to take? Right? SAT doesn't like that. They don't want you to not take their test. So we do expect that probably sometime within the next year, SAT is going to be looking at a way to do that as well, to let you try to retake just individual pieces. They have not made any announcements to that effect. That is just how this game tends to be played in the college admissions landscape between SAT and ACT. So at the moment, the only one that has officially announced that is ACT. And that will go into effect September of next year. So, everyone kind of comfortable with the scoring, how that works, right? Yeah, you could repeat it as many times as you want. Yeah, so let's talk about repeating the test. Because that's always the thing, it's like, can I just take it 7,000 times and then take my highest, right? I mean, you can. I don't know why you would. Colleges, once you've taken it more than about 3 times, they start to kind of go, oh, what are you doing? Okay, it's totally normal to take it twice. It's not a big deal to take it a 3rd time. Once you cross that line, though, if you're not seeing significant score improvement, if your score is kind of staying in the same range, stop. Because all you're doing is confirming to schools that this is the best you can do. Right? That's not something you want to reinforce necessarily. Yeah. So it's okay to take it more than once. In fact, you should, because they're going to superscore. So, hey, you might do better in one section than another. We definitely recommend take it more than once. But don't feel like you need to take it all 7 times it's offered that year. Okay? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good, okay. No. Yeah, so that was a good question. So the question was, if you took the SAT or ACT for Duke Tip in 7th grade, will colleges use that for admissions purposes? The answer is usually no. Officially, your scores are still valid, but colleges want to see how you can do in high school. They don't want to see how you did 6 years ago. So, in that case, no. So they wouldn't worry about that in terms of attempts, right? So like if you took it in 7th grade for Duke Tip, 5 years later, take it as a junior, they're not counting what you did. They don't care about what you did in junior high. So no, I wouldn't worry about that in terms of attempts. Also, she asked about PSAT. PSAT is completely separate, okay? So the PSAT, and we can talk about that a little bit more too, PSAT is a practice test for the most part. It is not a college admissions exam. Colleges do not use the PSAT for admissions purposes. For the vast majority of people who take the PSAT, it is a practice test. The PSAT is also used for scholarship purposes, for national merit scholarship consideration, for the top about 1 to 1.5% of students. If you are not in the top 1 to 1.5% of students in the state, it is a practice test for you for the SAT. Okay? The only time that it actually counts for national merit consideration is 11th grade. So a lot of times schools will have students take it as a freshman or as a sophomore as practice. It's a great thing to do, definitely. Take advantage of that if the school's offering it. But it's not going to count for anything that year. So don't stress about it. If you've got a freshman, if you've got a sophomore who's like, we have to take the PSAT. It's just a practice test. So let them relax, not stress about it then. 11th grade is when it would count for national merit purposes. The PSAT score is not actually used for admissions purposes. They would still have to take the SAT, ACT, that kind of thing. Yes, it does. Yeah, and PSAT scores are a little bit different. So they take that, the whole scale that's here, and it's shifted down just a little. which is a little funky. So instead of being on a 200 to 800 scale for each section on the PSAT, it's actually shifted down a few points. So instead, it's on a 160 to 760. It's 40 points shifted for each section. And then they add them back together to get a total out of 1520 for the PSAT. So the highest on the PSAT is a 1520, not a 1600. Why would they do that? It's kind of weird, right? Because it's the same scale, they just moved it. So really what they're doing, and they will tell you like, oh, it's to leave room for growth. You're just moving the scale. Really, it's so that when you take it at the beginning of your junior year, and let's say that you got, I don't know, 1300, right? If you do exactly as well in the spring on the SAT, right, get the same number of questions right, that kind of stuff, because they shifted the scale, it's like, oh, now I got a 1380. And so you feel like you did so much better. Look at all I've learned during my junior year. Yeah, don't stress about that. It's just they shift the scale. They play around with it. It's part of their game. So just kind of understand that's how that works. They also shift the test scores. So instead of being 10 to 40, they're 8 to 38 on the PSAT. But just look at the scale. But yeah, you do get all the subscores and all the things for the PSAT. So I'm going to get to that. So hold that thought. So let's first stay with scoring. What's a good score on these tests? I mean, yeah, a perfect score would be lovely, right? Yeah, obviously a perfect score is a good score. But do I need a 1600 to go to college? No. Do I need a 1600 to go to a good college? No. A good score is a score that gets you into the school you're trying to go to. Because once you're in college, unless you have a job like mine, nobody cares what your SAT score was, right? The whole point of your SAT and ACT score is to get you into school. And what score you need really depends on where you're trying to go to school. There are vastly different scoring ranges depending on where you're trying to go. So that blue handout that was at the back there, that has just a smattering of schools. One side is Texas schools, the other are national schools. It says, where will your scores take you? If you didn't grab one, you can grab it afterwards. We got a bunch back there. That just gives you a little bit of an idea of what kind of score do I need to get into the schools that I'm looking for. The other thing on that list, it also talks about, at the far right, the admission rate. That is the percent of students who apply that get in. Okay? So you'll notice some of them are like 80%. Most people who apply get into that school. Others are like 6%. Very few people who apply get into that school. So you can look at that and see, okay, how competitive do I need to be to try to get into that particular program, right? So that's just like I said, a sample of them. Not every single school is on that because that would be way more than one sheet. But I encourage you to do your research. One of the first things you should do starting out this process is start thinking about where you might want to go to school. Start making a list and look up what are their scores, right? What's the average score at that school? What's the average GPA for those freshman classes? What do I need in order to get into that program? And start thinking about, okay, now that I've taken a practice test, what's realistic, right? Am I in the range for these schools? Am I just a little ways out where if I do a little work, I can prep and get my score there? Some schools, even if you have a perfect score, it's hit or miss, right? If you're trying to go to Harvard or Yale. Like, even with a 1600, you may or may not actually get in. So it just kind of depends on the program, depends on the school, as to how heavily they're weighting the SAT and ACT scores, okay? Now, I know one of the big questions I always at this point is, I saw an article in the Washington Post a couple weeks ago about how a whole bunch of schools are not using the SAT and ACT anymore. So the company that they're using, that they refer to there, the statistics, it's a group called FairTest, fairtest.org, and they have a big list of colleges that don't require SAT and ACT. I would say use their data with a grain of salt. Okay, simply because every single public school in Texas is on that list. Because Texas has what we call the top 10% rule. If you are in the top 10% of your graduating class at a Texas high school, you have automatic admission to any public Texas university, with the exception of UT, because their threshold's a little lower because they have way too many people. Theirs is 6 to 7%, depending on the year, and dropping from year to year. But if you're in the top 10% of your class at your high school, you're automatically granted admission to Texas Tech, to UNT, to Texas A&M, without any reference given to your SAT and ACT scores. So therefore, Fair Test has every school in the country, or in the state, on their list of SAT and ACT optional. But it's only optional if you're in the top 10% of your class. And even then, it gets you into the university, but it doesn't necessarily get you into the college you want at that university. It doesn't get you into the School of Business. You still are going to need your SAT or ACT score for that, right? Or the School of Engineering, or the medical program, or whatever the program might be, right? So the top 10% rule gets you in as a general studies major. It does not guarantee that you're getting into the college of your choice within the larger university. Okay, so use all of that data. You hear all these people talking about, well, the colleges don't need the SAT or ACT anymore. Most of them still do. There are some that are saying, like, we don't really care about it that much, or we're devaluing it, we're not putting as much emphasis on it. That's great. A lot of those schools, in fact, the vast majority of those schools, still use the SAT and ACT for scholarship purposes. So you still need a good score to get the scholarship dollars for a lot of those schools. So do your research. Figure out, what kind of scores do I need? Some schools have, like, if you bring me a 32 on the ACT, full tuition guaranteed, right? Some, that threshold is lower. Just depends on the school as to what those requirements are. So, did you have a question? Of the class. Yeah, so like of the graduating class at the school. Yeah. So if you're in the top 10% of the students at Memorial High School, right, or whatever it is, then you would have automatic admission to Texas public universities. Yeah. I'm sorry? Yes, yeah. So the school uses, they've got all their criteria they use for ranking. It's basically GPA and level of coursework, that kind of stuff. So, yeah. But your counselors can tell you kind of what the ranks are and how that all works if they need to, yes. No. They rank everybody. Everybody gets ranked. It's just getting in the top 10%, depending on how the school does their ranking, they may weight honors classes or AP classes more heavily, just depending on the school. So it can help you, but it's not necessarily. Let's hold on to that, because we need to talk about SAT and ACT here, but we can get into AP and all the other tests a little bit later. Yeah. I just want to make sure we get through all the big stuff with SAT and ACT. So, yeah. Right, so top 10% are automatically admitted, and then they take applications for everybody else. Yeah, so that... It depends on the school. So the reason that UT had to petition the legislature to stop using all 10%, it was filling their entire class. So that's why they only have to fill, I believe it's something like 75% of their class with top 10% students, and then the rest they can take population at large. It's just going to vary from school to school. Yeah. So let's talk about what's on these tests. We talked about the scoring, let's talk about what they're actually going to test you on. So side-by-side comparison here between the two. Format, they're both, for the most part, multiple choice. ACT is 100% multiple choice. SAT has a small portion of the math questions at the end of the math sections that are what they call grid-in questions. Those grid-in questions are, there's no answer choices. and you just have to bubble the numbers of your answer. Okay, but for the most part, these tests are multiple choice. Content areas, notice, are about the same. English, math, reading, science, writing, reading and writing and language. Writing and language is the same as the English, that's grammar. Math, we said there's science mixed in, right, on the SAT. Notice that SAT has what they call the essay. ACT calls it the writing portion. It's still an essay. They just name it differently. On both of those tests, the essay is optional. Optional meaning you don't have to take it if you don't want to take it. But here's the thing, should you take it? Yeah, so vast majority of schools do not care about the essay. There are fewer than 20 universities that still require the essay for admission, and most of those are the entire University of California system. The UC system requires the essay. And then a couple other random schools. There are, as far as I know, no schools in Texas that require the essay. But a lot of schools that don't use the essay for admissions purposes still look at it for scholarship purposes. So should you do the essay? Yeah. They're super formulaic. There's nothing, it's 40 or 50 minutes of your life. Sit there, write the essay, be done with it. It might help you get some scholarship dollars. Okay? But it's optional. If the schools you're applying to are like, yeah, we don't look at it, please don't do it, then don't do it. Don't waste your time. But for most students, we tell them, go ahead, take it. Just that way you have it, because if at the last minute you decide to apply to a scholarship that wants it, or to a school that wants it, you want to make sure that you've got it, right? Scoring, we already talked about. The timing, notice, is about the same. About 3 hours without the essay, 340 or 350 with the essay, 335 or 350 without the essay. The big difference I want you to notice is that bottom one. ACT versus SAT in number of questions. Now, they're the same amount of time, right? We just said they're about 3-hour tests. ACT has far more questions to do in that time. So here's the big difference between the two. We said the content is mostly the same. The timing is the biggest difference. So on the ACT, the questions tend to be more straightforward, but you have less time to answer each question. On the SAT, the questions tend to be more complex, more multi-step kind of questions. But you have more time per question to work through it. So when you're thinking about which test is right for me, one of the big things to ask yourself is, which kind of tester am I? Do I like to just like, bam, 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 I know this one, I know this one, I know this one, like spit out your knowledge and be done, right? Time, the stress of the time doesn't bother you that much. If so, ACT is probably a better option. If you're more that like, the super time stress really, really gets to me, I'd like to just sort of sit back and think through it and take it step by step and work through those multi-step problems, SAT might be better for you. What we recommend is have every student should take a practice test of each. Take a practice SAT, take a practice ACT, see how you do. Colleges don't care which one you take. Okay? Universities, colleges do not care. They accept either one. Now, it used to be true for some of you parents who are like, well, that wasn't when I went to school. That very much used to be true that SAT was popular on the coasts and in Texas, and ACT was taken in the middle of the country. That really isn't the case anymore. There's still some holdover of that, just like everyone here is always taking the ACT, so that's what we do. But the colleges there will still accept either one, okay, without preference. That simply has to do with they have to report scores on both to the ranking agencies who are deciding how awesome they are. So they're perfectly happy to take whatever you give them, okay? So as a student then, take a practice test of each, see which one you naturally lean towards. Which one are you more comfortable doing? Which one did you get a higher score on? And then focus your energy and preparation on that test, okay? Where do you naturally lean? Then spend time prepping for that one. If you want to go take the real thing for both of them, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But I would say spend your time, your energy, your preparation on the test that's your stronger one. Okay? And then plan to submit that. Yeah. Oh, good question. So the question was like, if you're guessing, are there any negatives for? The answer is no, not anymore. There used to be. So it used to be that there was like a guessing penalty on SAT. That is no longer true. So on both tests, your score is just based on how many questions you get right. Okay, with no penalty. So because of that, should you ever leave a question blank on the SAT or ACT? No. Never ever leave a question blank. Make sure that you answer everything. All right? If I'm running out of time and I have to guess, is it better to pick just one letter and bubble, like, let's say all B's? Or should I jump around and be like A, B, C, D, C, A, like draw a little picture? Which one's better? Pick just one letter. Yeah. You have a slight statistical advantage just because of the way the tests are designed. You have a slight statistical advantage picking just one letter over jumping around. Okay, so pick your favorite letter. The next question is always, so which letter? There is no better letter. Okay, they make very, very sure that there is no better letter. On any given test, there's going to be roughly the same number of A's as B's as C's as D's. Okay, so pick whichever letter you like, A for awesome, B for Beyonce, like whatever you want to do. Bubble that letter all the way through for any of the ones that you don't know how to do or that you don't have time for. Okay, so yeah. They tend to just, because they put it, so the question was, do they look at just one score or do they look at both? They tend to look at whatever's highest, and that's what they're going to use for admissions purposes. Mainly because they put it into the big formula to help, along with your GPA and other factors to help them compare students. So they're going to take the highest number and then just use that. So even if you submit an SAT score and an ACT score, most schools are just going to figure out which one was higher comparatively and use that. So, and on that little bookmark that was back there, there is a side-by-side comparison of SAT versus ACT scores. So you can kind of tell, like, roughly, if I got a 1200 on the SAT, what does that mean ACT-wise? So that you can tell which way you're leaning if you take a practice of each. Yeah. Sorry. So the parentheses is with the essay. Yeah. So the essay on the SAT is 50 minutes long. So it's 3 hours without the essay and 350 if you take the essay. Yeah. No, so the essay has an independent score. It does not factor into your total composite scores in any way. On the ACT, it's a score on a scale of 2 to 12. Basically, 2 graders give you a 1 to 6, and then they add them up. On the SAT, it's a little more complicated. They give you separate scores for reading, analysis, and writing. So you actually get 3 essay scores for the SAT. But again, those essay scores are not factored in any way to your composite score if you take that. It's a completely separate score for the essays. Correct. Yeah. So the question was, do students have to pick? Do they have to take both, or can they pick, or how does that work? They can take both if they want to. They don't have to. They can take either one, whichever one they like. Yeah. So. Nope. Yeah. Because these tests don't really lean one way or the other in terms of any sort of aptitude, really. I mean, if we're being really honest, it's not going to tell you whether you're better suited for English or for math or for science or any of those kinds of things. Yeah. Now, there are subject tests. We'll talk more about those at the end. They're subject specific that some programs will require, but for just SAT versus ACT, no. I'm sorry, I didn't. Mm-hmm. Either one. Yeah. I mean, just in terms of SAT versus ACT, like, yeah, either SAT, it doesn't, there is no preference. they're looking at the total score, and then they're looking at other factors. They're looking at your GPA, they're looking at extracurricular activities, they're looking at everything else in that application. Yeah, to separate someone like at an Ivy League school, how they're deciding. Yeah, because the vast majority of people who are applying to Harvard are 1550 or higher on the SAT. So at that point, they can't really use the SAT score as a deciding factor because everybody is statistically the same, right? So they're looking at GPAs, they're looking at AP scores, they're looking at all the other factors that go along with an application. That's a good question. So the question was, can you choose to not disclose a particular section? Like if you didn't do as well in the essay, could you choose to not disclose the essay score? No. It's test as a whole. So you can pay extra money to not disclose a particular test day. They call that score choice, where like I don't want them to see my March SAT at all. But you can't choose, like, I don't want them to see my math score or my essay score or any particular piece of the test. And honestly, judges now are making you sign a pledge that you are showing them all of the scores, that you are not hiding any of them from them. And honestly, but really, they're going to take your highest. So they don't care about anything that's not your highest. They really doesn't look bad. Just retake the test, do better on the essay the next time, and they'll look at your highest for that when they super score. So, yeah. Yeah, so you have to have an official report SAT sent to the school. Yeah, well, I mean, they do it digitally, but yes. So it has to come actually not from you, but from SAT, from college ACT. So yeah, when you register for the SAT and the ACT, and we can talk about this a little with the timeline stuff too, when you can get with that a certain number, and it varies from test between SAT and ACT, of included what they call score reports, or basically, hey, we'll send your scores to 4 schools included with the price of the test. And then every report beyond that, you have to pay for. So if I'm applying to 25 colleges or whatever, right, I'll have 4 that came with the SAT, and then I'm going to pay for the other 21 reports and have those sent to particular schools. And you select that when you're through your College Board portal or through your ACT portal. Yeah. So I'm going to keep moving. We can come back and talk about some other questions. I just want to make sure we get through everything here. So let's kind of break them down section by section. So for ACT, this is kind of your breakdown. You have 45 minutes for the English for 75 questions. That's grammar, so some of those are pretty straightforward, pretty short. But yeah, it's quick moving through that. For the math, you have 60 minutes for 60 questions. So you have about a minute per question on the ACT. For the reading, you have 35 minutes for 40 questions, and that's 4 passages. Questions, so 10 questions on each passage. And then same deal, 35 minutes for 40 questions, and then the essay there, okay? So that's kind of how that's set up. Like we said, ACT is the one that's you're really rushed time-wise as compared to the SAT. But questions tend to be more straightforward so that you can get through them within that time frame. Yeah, so there are breaks built in. So you math, and then another one, or maybe after the English, after the math, and then before the essay. So minute breaks. You can get up, you can leave the room, you can go to the bathroom and come back, but they're quick, right? They're 5 to 10 minutes depending on the test and the time on the test. But yeah, they're short, but it's get up, stretch your legs, come back, let's get going again. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that's a good question. So like if I finish a section early, I cannot move on to the next section. So it is a set time. Everyone in the room starts on this section. The timer goes off after 45 minutes. Okay, now we're going to move to the math section. You've got 60 minutes, ready, go. Timer goes off, right? And then we move to the next section. So no, you cannot jump around between sections. Once you're done with a section, you can't go back to it. So you have to complete it just during the time for that particular section. That's a good question, though. So all the scores are a bell curve. So basically they take everybody who took the test, they look at how many questions you got right? And then they lay that, what they call the raw scores, the number of questions right, out over their bell curve for the ACT 36 points, right? And that's how they do the distribution. Yeah. And the same thing works for SAT. Start off the morning with the reading section. Cool, you're tired, you're not awake yet. Here, read some really boring stuff for an hour, right? 65 minutes. Then you move on to the writing and language section, which is our grammar. You've got 35 minutes for 44 questions. So a little bit shorter there time-wise, but still not too bad. Then you have 2 math sections on the SAT. You have a calculator math section and a no calculator math section. So the first one is no calculator. Yes, it is possible to do math without a calculator. And then the second one is a calculator allowed. Now, just because the calculator is allowed does not mean necessarily that you need a calculator. Okay, it just means that you are allowed to use a calculator for those questions. The calculator for both of these tests, they allow up to a graphing calculator. We recommend at least a scientific level calculator, but you can just use whatever you got. There are some restrictions. It can't be like a laptop. You cannot use the calculator on your cell phone. It cannot connect to the internet. It cannot have a QWERTY keyboard. It cannot talk or beep. For the older ones among us, it cannot have paper printing receipt tape. Okay? Yeah, that cannot come with you to the test. But any of your kind of basic scientific or graphing calculators that we tend to use in school are typically fine. You can see when you register for the test the full list of approved and not approved calculators for these exams. So, ACT are allowed to use the calculator for the whole math section. Yeah, but only the math section, not the science or any of the others. So let's then talk about where do we go? How do we do this? Preparation and planning are important. You don't want to just show up and take the SAT, the real one, for the first time, having done no prep. Okay, not a good idea. So, things that we need to think about. First of all, when are you going to test? Right, so this is this year's test dates. They are roughly the same every year. So for those of you with freshmen, with sophomores who aren't ready for this yet, they're roughly the same. That just depends on, what day the Saturday fell. But for the most part, this is roughly when they happen each year. That is also on the back of the little bookmark that we gave you. So you've got the test dates for this year on that bookmark as well. So you can kind of see when those fall. There are 7 test dates every year for each test. You can see whatever makes the most sense for you throughout that year. And we'll talk about a timeline here in a minute of kind of when they fall. But let's think about how to think about these tests, how to prepare. Because taking these tests, as it says, requires a little bit of savvy. You need to understand how they're asking questions and how they're going to try to mess with you. So, it would be lovely if someone I know is name the quadrilateral, and then someone's written in Bob, Sam, Tedison, Kate, Harry, right? Okay, it's probably not going to work for us on the SAT. Find X. Here it is. Found it. Lovely. Again, not going to get you points on this test. You need to know what they're looking for, right? Okay, so we want to think like the test writers and think about how the test writers are putting these things together. So the way they put these together, remember, it is a standardized test, and people are predictable. So just as an example here, I want everyone to pick a number. Don't tell me what it is. Everybody got a number? Got a number in your head? Okay. How many people picked a negative number? All right, so half the numbers in the world right there, pretty much nobody picked, right? A couple people, but most of you know. What about a fraction or a decimal? Everyone pick pi or e? No, not so much. Okay. What about something over 100? Couple over 50? Over 20? Okay, a few more. So all the rest of you, out of all the numbers in the universe that you could have selected, picked a positive integer less than 20. How many of you picked 3, 7, or 14? There's always a bunch. They know this. We are trained. Okay? They know that when you ask people in America to pick a number, 80% will pick a positive integer less than 20. Okay? And of those, almost 40% will pick 3, 7, or 14. It is what we are trained to do. Okay? They know that when I say pepperoni, you're going to think about pizza. So all they have to do is drop the word pepperoni in an answer, write a question about pepperoni, drop the word pizza in an answer choice, right? And immediately you're like, ooh, pepperoni pizza. Even though it had nothing to do with anything, you're more likely to pick it. Be careful. Watch for your biases. Watch for the things that they have trained you to do. Okay? So, second one here. What color is that space over there on the right side of the screen? Over here? Yeah. White? Okay. Yeah, so that section is white. And what do cows drink? Cows drink milk? I mean, I guess baby cows drink milk. But no, cows drink water. Yeah. How did I get you all to say milk? I got you thinking about the color white, right? So I primed you to head in one direction. And then I asked you a question that just seemed super obvious, right? You relate cows with milk and drinking, right? They will do this to you on the test. It will lead you down one path, right? And they will ask you something that's related to something that your brain automatically does. And you can bet that milk would have been an answer choice. And you would have been in a hurry. And you'd have picked it. Even though you know that cows, for the most part, drink water. You would still end up missing the question. So slow down. Think about how they're trying to mess with you on these tests. Think about how they're putting the test together to mess with the person who's in a rush, who's not really stopping to read it, who's not really stopping to think. Because that's a lot of us when we take these standardized exams. The test writers expect you to react in predictable ways. So let's look at this in terms of an actual math question. The price of an item by 20%, then decreases the price by 15%. What was the percent change in the price of the item? Well, it went up 20 and then went down 15. What are they hoping you're going to say? 5, right? But it's not 5. Yeah, because if it went up 20%, right? Let's say it started at 100, went up 20%, now it's at 120. 15% of that is not 15, right? So we're going to end up missing that question. But you can bet that 5 would have been an answer choice. Take your time. Make sure you read the question. Make sure you take things step by step. The biggest reason people miss questions on this test is not because they didn't know how to do the math. It's because they got bogged down in the question and they didn't take their time and take it step by step. So let's talk about pacing, because we want to take our time, right? So thinking about kind of the tortoise and the hare. A lot of us have this idea that, okay, I have to finish the section, right? I have 60 minutes to do those 60 questions on the math section, and I've got to make sure that I get to every single one of them. So our hare here, he rushes through and does all 60 of them. But he was rushing. He makes some of those same careless mistakes. He doesn't spend enough time. So he maybe only gets about half of them right. Okay, so those 30 questions he got right result in a 20 out of our 36, right, on our actual scored scale. Then we have our buddy the tortoise. Tortoise slows down, takes his time, doesn't worry about trying to finish every single one. So he only, take it piece by piece here. So he only attempts 45 of them. But since he was taking his time, he gets most of them right. Right? So he gets 35 of the 45 right. He missed 10, right? But what did he do with those other 15 questions? He guessed. So he had a 22 just with the ones that he got right, but he's not going to stop there. He's going to guess. And even if he's not a great guesser, let's say he gets 3 more right. Now those 3 more right, he's now got 38 total questions right. He's got a 24. That's 4 points higher on the math section than our friend the hare who was rushing. 4 points on the math section, that's going to bring your total average composite score up a point. That's significant. That can make a big difference. So slow down, score more. Same thing is true on our SAT. So SAT, let's say he rushes through, there's 58 questions. He gets 26 of them right, 32 of them wrong. That's a 540. But our friend the tortoise slows down, takes his time. He only gets to 38, but he got 30 of them right. So already he's at a 580, which is better. He guesses on the remaining 20. Let's say he's not even that great a guesser. He only gets 4 of them right. That's a 34 questions right for a total of a 610. Don't feel like you have to answer every single question in order to get a decent score. 610 will get you in a lot of places, right, for the math score. So think about where you're spending your time. Also, you don't have to do the questions in that section in order, right? So there's 60 questions in that math section or 58 questions in that math section, depending on which test you're on. You don't have to do number 1 and then number 2 and then number 3 and then number 4. If you look at it, you're like, ooh, this one's going to take forever. Skip it. Go find better places to spend your time, right? Every single question is worth the same as every other question. You don't get any more points for a hard question than for an easy one. So go find the easy ones. Get your points in the bank. And then with whatever time you have left, go back to the ones that were harder or were more time consuming, right? So sometimes you have to have that conversation with your ego because we all like, no, I'm smart enough, I can figure this out, right? But it's not about that. It's about, is this one worth the time to do this right now during this test? Not could you do it if you had all the time in the world, but is this worth my time right now? Because if I can do 3 other questions in the time it takes me to do this one, go do the 3. Get at the points instead of just 1. So, make sense? You had a question? That is a solid question. That is in the process of changing. At the moment, yes, both tests are completely paper-based. ACT and SAT have both been beta testing digital versions of their tests, primarily overseas. ACT has announced that at some point in the near future, they've not given a definitive date, that the ACT will have a digital option. So you can still take a paper-based test, but there would be a computer option if you wanted to do it on a computer instead. SAT is not far behind with that, but they've not released specific, what's that test going to look like? Is it going to be exactly the same? Is it going to be a little bit different? Is the scoring going to be the same? They've not released details at this point. So. Nope, cannot bring anything in. So you can write all over the test booklet. But you can't, so you can do like your scratch work in the test booklet, but they don't give you any scratch paper. Yeah. They will have, all the computer-based tests, the GRE, the GMAT, the MCAT, that kind of stuff, all have some form of scratch paper or what they call note boards, which is like a laminated paper that you can write on with like a dry erase pen or wet erase pen. They will probably have something like that, but they haven't announced what that might look like. ACT has said that coming in the near future, it's probably whenever they can get the tech to all work right and have it all measure out the same. We do expect it probably next year or the year after to be an option. It won't be like everybody take it on the computer. Vast majority of students will still take the paper test for probably the next 5-10 years. We don't know. We don't know anything. Yeah, they haven't announced any of that stuff yet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They have not announced any of that kind of information. Yeah, they've been beta testing like 17 different versions, so we don't know what they're actually going to land on. Yeah, so they haven't made any of those announcements for computer-based testing. So as you're preparing for this, we want you to take a practice test, see how you do. From there, Having the right coach, doing the right prep is going to make all the difference for you. Because the coach and the prep is going to tell you, give you strategies, give you approaches. So for example, here's an ACT problem. Claire's 6 years old, 6 years younger than Alan. In terms of C, how old will Alan be in 3 years? Okay, nothing too crazy here, but for those of you who are maybe going, oh, algebra, right? Let's try to make this just a little bit easier. Because which is easier, 2 plus 2 or x plus y? 2 plus 2, right? We like nice actual numbers. So instead of the e's everywhere, let's pick some actual numbers. This is our plugging in strategy. So instead of C, let's just say 10. Let's just say that Claire's 10. Okay, so if she's 10, she's 6 years younger than Alan. How old does that make Alan? 16, okay. So then how old is Alan going to be in 3 years? 19. Everybody good with that math? 10 plus 6 plus 3. Nothing too crazy. Okay, so now all we have to do is go through our answers. Everywhere we see a C, put in a 10. See which one gives us that 19. All right, so 10 minus 6 equals 4. That's not the 19 we were looking for. 10 minus 3 is 7. No good. 10 equals 10, right? 10 plus 3. No good. 10 plus 9. We have our winner. Did you actually need algebra to answer this question? That's actually the case on a lot of questions. If you know strategies there are a lot of strategies you can use to approach this test to get more questions right as you go through, okay? Just in the interest of time, so this is an SAT, this would be like our grammar section. Grammar section, you get a passage, you get sections of the passage that are underlined. Your job is to find the best version of the underlined part, right? Just in the interest of time, we're not going to go through all of these, but that's kind of what that looks like, okay? So let me just click through that real fast. Let's talk timelines. Let's talk prep. So 11th grade is the magic year for taking these tests, okay? Why do we want to do them in 11th grade and not senior year? What do you have to do at the beginning of senior year? Apply. Yeah, application deadlines are earlier and earlier every year. For a lot of schools, they're November 1st, some are October 15th, some are as early as October 1st, or even for some of your early decision, early action programs, as early as September 15th, that they'll start looking at those or expect those applications of your senior year. Which means you can't wait till senior year to take the SAT and ACT. 11th grade, junior year, is the magic year. So you want to prep before that. What a lot of students will choose to do is prep the summer between 10th and 11th grade. Simply because you're not in school, you don't have too much other craziness going on, you can really focus on it. There are some summer exams as well, so if you're ready, you can go ahead and take it. So if you're looking at ACT focus, at that point you could prep all summer, take the September ACT, right? And then the PSATs in October, December, you could retake the ACT if you wanted to. And then you still have another test in April. And then there are those summer tests between your junior and senior year that you could take as well if you needed to. So this is just one kind of sample timeline here. For SAT, same deal. There is an August SAT. So you could prep and take that August SAT, then the PSAT. The nice thing about prepping for SAT is the PSAT is almost identical. Like in terms of what's on it, it's basically the exact same test, but a couple questions shorter. Okay? So if you prep for one, you're prepped for both, which is great. And then you've got the SAT in December that you could prep for, and the June SAT as kind of a last chance test. You could take that August one if you need to right before senior year as your last chance test as well. So this is recommended. A lot of students like to do it during sophomore year, the end of sophomore year, summer between sophomore and junior year, simply because then you don't have to stress about it during school. But if you would prefer to do it during 11th grade, lots of students prepare during 11th grade. So if we're thinking like if you've got 11th graders now who are just starting this process, so start prepping now, thinking more towards like the April ACT. Okay, there's a February one, but I would, if you're starting now, think towards April so you can really kind of have plenty of time to prep and get that all ready. There's another one in June, and then that still gives you the summer tests, or the September one is sort of your last chance there. For SAT, if you're starting now, I would prep, there's a March test and a May test in the spring, and then there's also the August exam, which would be sort of your last chance test at the beginning of senior year. October really being your last chance of senior year, depending on when your application deadlines are. So, comfortable with that? The other thing I do want to tell you, this little fold out that was back there, I think there's still some more back there, folds out into a big roadmap that tells you what to do from freshman to senior year, kind of what to do when. So that's really helpful timeline-wise as well. So the big thing, though, is make sure that you're prepared. Take a practice test, see how you do, and then decide what your plan needs to be from there. There's lots of different ways to prepare for the SAT and for the ACT. And which one you need, which one's right for you, really depends on how much prep you need. Like, how far do you need to go? If you take the SAT practice test and you're already scoring in the range that you need to get into the schools you're trying to go take the real thing and be done, right? If you take it and you're like, okay, I just need a little, I'm a few points away, I just need a little more work. Maybe buying a book, just taking another couple practice tests, that kind of stuff will be totally sufficient. If you have further to go, if you're 100 or 200 more points away, then you may want to look at a prep course or a class, some sort of tutorial, something along those lines, okay? So lots of different options. Remember that these test scores, though, are only a piece of your application. They're just a part of it. They're an important part, but they're just a part of this test, or of this application. So there are other factors. Looking for your grades, they're looking for your test scores, and they're looking for the actual quality of the application itself, your letters of recommendation, your essays, that kind of stuff. So think about what you can control of each of those along the way in terms of your preparation. Think about your grades. Grades are big. That's going to be a big piece of it. Some schools will require other tests, those subject tests. So, while I'm talking about that, so SAT subject tests, basically they're more tests. There are a whole variety. There's almost 30 different tests. You can take them in different sciences. You can take them in lots of different languages. You could take a test in French or something like that. Different programs will require them for different things. If I am trying to get into an engineering program, for example, they may require me to take the math one and a science of my choice, right? Certain, like Ivy League schools, a lot of them will recommend that you take 2 to 3 of them. Okay, if the college recommends you something, should you do it? Yeah. Just because remember that the other people who are applying, who you're competing with, are going to do it. You don't do it, and they do, and it was recommended, then they're already a leg up over you, right? The subject tests are 1-hour tests, so you can take up to 3 of them in a day, and they're scored on that 200 to 800 scale. They're a little funky, though, in that scale is really skewed on the subject tests, because people only take the ones they're good at. Right? If I don't speak Chinese, I'm not taking the Chinese language with listening test. So because of that, the 50th percentile score is a perfect score. In fact, something like the 80th percentile is still a perfect score. So you would take those subject tests, and really, if you're taking an AP course in that subject, a great time to take the subject test is right around the same time as that AP exam, because they're written by the same people. So they take it on, they're actually offered on the same days as the SAT. So yeah, and different ones are offered on different SAT test days. You have to look at the schedule to see, but you can pick up to 3 in a day, and you can take them. Most schools don't require them. So let me say that. For most schools, you don't need to take subject tests, but if you're applying to more competitive school or more programs within some of the larger schools, they may recommend or require a subject test or 2. All of that's on the College Board website. Yeah, all the dates and all the everything for that are all there. Yes. But yeah, I always say don't take it unless you actually are good at that subject. because the scores are really skewed. And also, if you're preparing for an honors or AP, like if you're taking an honors or AP class, those are good ones. If you're prepping for the AP exam, take that test in May or June, the subject test, if you're going to do it, because you're already preparing for that AP test at that same time. You might as well kill two birds with one stone, right? So. No, so usually you would just take it, just take it once, typically, unless you needed to retake it. If a particular school wanted a specific one and needs a particular score, you might retake it just to try to achieve a particular score for a particular program. But like I said, vast majority of schools don't use subject tests. It's really your more competitive schools and your more competitive programs within those schools. So there's one back here. For the subject tests, I'm sorry? SAT, the total score the essay is a completely separate score. It doesn't factor in. So it's a different scoring scale for each. Yeah. If you have to select it on the score report, like which schools you want to send those scores to. Yes. So let me just get a couple more things done because I know we're almost done. You had a question? Yeah. So particular programs within universities, yeah. So like if I want to go to the School of Engineering at University of Texas, I have to take a couple of them. But if I want to get the University of Texas as a whole, I don't. So yeah, particular programs that you're applying to might require them. Yeah. You could take them sophomore year, freshman year, whenever you're ready for them. Sure. Yeah, so the question was, could you take them sophomore year? Could you take them earlier? If I'm taking an AP course my sophomore year, sure, go ahead, and I know I'm going to need it, yeah, go ahead and take that. You don't have to wait till junior year to take those. Are there what? I'm sorry? Yes, you can take it multiple times. Yes, for the subject tests. Remember, schools are looking at things. Do your research about what a particular school needs, figure out what that school is looking for so that you can make sure that you meet all of those requirements, all those deadlines, all that kind of stuff. So to help you with all of this, so Princeton Review, we are partnered with FriscoISD. So we are the exclusive test prep provider for FriscoISD. We actually do run classes for SAT and ACT on campus. Right now we're running them on campus at Wakeland and at Liberty, but they're open to the whole district. Frisco students get a discount on all of our courses. So promo code's up there. It's also, I believe, on that yellow flyer that you guys have. We have two different sets of programs, our Ultimate, which is our kind of most popular. We also have a program for our highest scoring students, for those who are already scoring a 1200 or higher on the SAT and trying to get over 1400. It's a special program for those students that is our 1400 plus program. So we've got lots of different options depending on your scoring level, depending on what you need. We also do one-on-one private tutoring that you guys could get 10% off of. Also, I always want to make sure everybody knows Frisco students, as part of our partnership, have access to our full self-paced SAT and ACT program for free. Okay, so all you have to do to get that, and I don't think it's up there, all you have to do to get that, if you go to princetonreview.com, look for you'll be purchasing it, right? But put in the code FREE for Frisco, spelled out free for FOR, Frisco, and you get it completely for free. It's a $300 SAT and ACT prep product that you guys get. So please take advantage of that. So it's our self-paced SAT and ACT. So it's drills, it's practice questions, it's practice tests, it's video lessons, it's all kinds of stuff to help you get ready for the SAT and the ACT. Right. So yeah, we also run courses to really talk about strategy and that kind of stuff. We do free practice tests on pretty much all the Frisco campuses. SAT and ACT, usually one each semester. So you guys are welcome to attend those. You get a full score report to kind of tell you how to do that, how you did. That's always the first step. Take a practice test. And we do run them all the time throughout the district. So talk to your counseling office. They can tell you the dates for all of those, if the ones that are coming up. I know we have them scheduled at, I think, pretty much every single Frisco high school in the spring. So you can sign up for a practice test, see how that goes, and then from there decide, what kind of program is going to be best for you, depending on what you need. You may just need the online prep. You may just need to buy a book. You may need a little bit more, a course or a tutoring kind of package or something like that. So lots of different options to help you kind of get ready for all of these tests. Yes, we do have them in the summer as well. Before everybody leaves, I will take some questions at the end, but we're giving away these books up here today. So in order to enter to win this little contact card that was back there's a whole bunch of them sitting back there. It says, let's get to know each other. Fill this out for me. And we're going to collect them. So we'll collect these, and then I'm going to draw. Must be present to win, so don't leave. We're going to draw, and I'm going to give away these books, and I will tell you what those are while you guys are filling those out. If you have them, you can drop them in here, or we'll come down the aisles and pick them up here in just a second. So the books, guys, so you know what we're giving away. First of those is College Admission 101, which is our top most frequently asked questions for the whole college admissions process. So we're giving away 2 copies of that. We're also giving away our Paying for College. This one just came out a few weeks ago. This is all the process you need for how do I pay for college without going broke, right? So we're giving away that. Our Best Value Colleges. So Best Value Colleges, this is colleges with the biggest return on investment in terms of how much are you paying to go there versus how much are you actually getting out of it, salary-wise and everything else when you graduate. And then our most popular are our best 385 colleges. This is our big college research book. This is the one with all the ranking lists in it of, the best dorm food and the best every major. It also has the results of all of our surveys in terms of which schools, what are they known for, what do they like best, all the statistics, all the research is in this one. So if you guys will fill that out, and then we'll pick those up. If we are out, then we don't have any more here with us today. So we can get you some, but. All right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So a couple people are asking, is this presentation going to be posted on the website? Yes, it will. So.
Elaborate on that super scoring, how it works.
So basically, they take your highest of each section, even on different dates.
Is it the college board, the ACT, going to send the
So right now, each college does it individually. ACT in 2020 in September of 2020 is changing to where they're going to report the super score.
So if they take tests now before the September 22, but they're applying after September 22, they will still
That'll be, yes, for what's on that report. Correct. Yes. Okay, so we're going to do this drawing, so let's get that, and then I can stick around and answer some questions. So I just want to make sure we get everybody who wants to enter cards in this bag. Everybody get your cards in so we can win. Yeah. Sure, yeah. We got everybody's cards. Drop them in here. Pass them this direction, and then we'll draw. Thank you guys so much for spending the evening with me. Hopefully this was helpful. Okay, yeah, let me draw, and then I'll stick around and answer questions. All right, okay. All right, let's try to get these in. Extras, if anyone needs them. Yeah, we're going to draw in just a second. Must be present to win. If you're still filling them out, hurry. Last call. Mixing them up. Try to keep it fair. I'm going to let Angie draw. Thank you. we got any others? Okay, I'm going to let you draw. Reach in. We've got 6 different books. So our first winner is, I'm going to totally butcher these names, y'all. I apologize. It looks like Sailaja. Sailaja, Malala. Saija. Huh? Yes? Coming? Awesome. Yeah, come on up. Grab a book. You can pick whichever one you like. Who was it? Did we figure out who it was? Back here? Okay, perfect. All right. You want to draw the second one? Yeah, and you can, is that yours? Last name's different? Uh-oh. So we still have another winner. I'm sorry. Can you pronounce that? Oh, that might be. Is that one you? Elijah? That's your wife? Okay. So I need the card back, but then you one of those books. Sorry, I need the card back, but yeah, if you can grab any one of those books. Okay, our second one.
All right, so this is a 9th grade student, Somya. She did not put her last name down. Oh. You as the mom put your first name down?
Yes.
Put it for her. Okay.
I do not see the age.
It's graduation year 2020.
All right. Is it Srijan Bhattaneri?
Yes. Over here. Excellent. Awesome. Go ahead and grab a book. And that's 4, which means we have 2 more.
Okay. Shalaja?
Thank you.
Again?
Again, there's no last name.
No last name. Shalaja at
Looks like Gmail.
Gmail.
No, going once, going twice. That's you?
It is you.
Okay.
Wow, you got the energy behind you tonight.
All
You
right.
should go play
Is that all the books?
the lottery.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4. That should be 6. I think. I've got 6 cards in my hand. All right. So I think that's everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming. If you have questions, feel free to let us know. My card is also back there, so feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email. We'll be happy to answer all your questions.